Now I'm going to show you how to adjust your URL slugs. Before we begin, I do need to make this one note. URL slugs are the last thing you want to change if your site has been active. What I mean is you don't want to surprise Google with brand new URL slugs out of nowhere. Changing your URL slugs could lead people to dead pages. And so I highly recommend seeking expert advice if you really want to change URL slugs. If you just launched your website, this is totally fine. Feel free to change the slugs so that they're appropriate and correct. If you've had your site for a while, longer than a year, I highly recommend seeking expert help to make sure you get 301 set up correctly. You notify Google immediately so that you don't have people ending up on dead pages when they go to Google search results looking for your site and clicking on a link that no longer exists. So let's start with the homepage. The homepage I want to start with primarily because it doesn't show up in the URL bar if you're on Google Chrome or Safari, but I do want to bring note to it because it should be relevant. Sometimes people change their URL slug, they make their about page, and somehow this just ends up being about us 3, home 5, any of that. Make sure it's relevant. Home, homepage, index, any of those things work. So the same thing, you just click on the little settings wheel, that's where you could change it. Now let's click into the blog. If you click on the gear wheel here for the entire blog, you could adjust that so that you have the URL slug. And take note of this. I'm going to change this to blogging just for a moment. I want to show you. I'm going to change this to "you are the best." Usually I put hyphens in this, but I just want to show you something. If I go to blog post 1 and I click this little settings wheel, so we're going to adjust this now, the URL slug, I'm going to click settings. This is not in the SEO tab, and this is not on just the main tab here. It's under options. When you go to options, then you'll see the post URL. As you can see, that new URL I just made exists here. You are the best / that's where it is. I'll also say Squarespace, when you make a new page, they make really beautiful URL slugs. When you make a new blog post, they make really ugly URL slugs. So often there's a lot of random numbers and arbitrary letters that mean nothing within your URL slug. So I highly recommend always triple checking your post URL slug as you launch a new blog post. So before you launch it, you want to make sure it has a relevant URL slug there. All right, so let's close this for now. Next, we're going to go to shop. Same thing. I'm going to click in here. You could click the settings wheel and adjust it as we did the page. And then for a product, we'll click this, we'll click edit. And then in here, we'll scroll down and click edit. And then this is where you could change it. So here you can change the URL slug for a product in your store. Again, Squarespace with products, blog posts, events, portfolios doesn't do a great job of naming the URL slug. So you always want to triple check that as you are creating content. All right, so we're going to exit out of that. We're going to go now to the portfolio, and I'm going to go to a project and hit settings. Then we're going to go to SEO. Nope, we're going to stay at general. And same thing here. We're going to make the adjustment here. You'll see how my portfolio is titled Portfolio 1. You don't want that ever, unless that is the name of the portfolio. Portfolio 1, you never want it to have a 1 at the end or a bold or any of those things. So URL slug portfolio 1, and then you could adjust the actual project name here. And finally, for events, when you click on an event, the 3 little dots, and click settings, in options is where you could change the event title. Again, you're seeing event 2 and 8B92. Arbitrary URL, you want it to be relevant. You want your URL to be relevant here.